What if you could have your own AI assistant that would take care of localizing titles and descriptions on your YouTube channel for you? In this video, I will show you how to create a local AI assistant with Ollama and n8n that will fetch data from YouTube and use a translation tool to translate titles and descriptions for your videos. So let's dive into it. The system we'll be building is a simple AI agent that is able to use tools, and this AI agent will be called by a webhook and also respond to a webhook. And we will use a local Ollama chat model here with the window buffer memory. And for the purpose of this video, we will create two custom tools that our agent can use to fulfill his destiny here. So we will start building our localization agent by adding a webhook node here. And for now, I will just do that without authentication. And for the response, I will use a respond to webhook node here. And to make it easier for testing when we are building the workflow, I will just pin some data here so we don't have to execute HTTP requests to this webhook all the time. And now I can add our AI agent. And this will be a tools agent because we want to use tools with it. And I will just define a simple prompt here. And I put this to an expression here. And I will just write video underscore ID colon. And then I can pull in the video ID from the HTTP request. And for the options, I want to define a system prompt. And for now, I will just copy that in and put it also to an expression. Because when you put it to an expression here, you can just click over here and you will have a nice overview. And it's much easier to write in this window than in the tiny one down here. Now that we have our agent, we need to put a model to it. So we choose Ollama. And in this case, I want to work with Qwen 2.5 7 billion instruct. And then we also add some memory to it. For the session ID, I will just keep that simple and set this to an expression and just give it a timestamp of now. The window buffer memory will be enough in this case because we don't need to really permanently store the session for the AI agent. So this will be good enough. And now we can start defining our tools. So the first tool we'll be using should get video metadata from YouTube. And the second one should be a translation agent. And just to have this complete, I will also add the respond to webhook node here and just add a response code of 200, which means OK in this case. And now I can just save it here. And the tools we have defined here, they are kind of empty right now. So the first thing we will need to do is to build actual workflows in n8n in order to add functionality to the tools here. So when it comes to custom tools in n8n, these are basically just workflows. And these workflows, for example, could be a workflow that fetches order data from your Shopify store or another AI agent, or the workflow could just get customer data out of your CRM. It really doesn't matter. We can define any kind of tool and purpose here in n8n. And the only thing we really have to ensure that the communication between the agent and the tools is reliable and is working. And what you do within your workflows, that's really up to you. So we will start with a tool for retrieving video metadata from YouTube. And to start off with, we need to define a trigger. And for the trigger, we take the tool execute workflow trigger here. And that means that this workflow will just wait for execution from another workflow. And here I will also pin some data to make it easier for testing. And of course, this has to be also managed in the AI agent, so we get the right format here, and that we will talk about later on in the video. So for now, we just put some JSON in here. So we have a query, and that contains the video ID we want to look up on YouTube here. And now this data is pinned, and I can close it. And then I can just start adding a YouTube node here and get a video here in this case. In order to interact with the YouTube API, we need some credentials here. So we go to new credentials, and I will quickly show you how to set this up on Google Cloud. And in order to set this up, we need to go to the Google Cloud console here, and the URL is console.cloud.google.com. And I will just set up a new project here and name this one n8n. And now that the project has been created, I can go down here to API and services and enable APIs and services and just search for YouTube here and just select the YouTube Data API version 3 and enable it here. And now we will need to set up a consent screen here. And we make this an external one, hit create. And I just named this one n8n demo. For the support email, I take my Gmail address here. And down here, I can also take my Gmail address and save and continue. And then I need to add scopes here. And here we can just search for the YouTube API. And then I select manage your YouTube account as scope here and hit update. And now the scope has been added and I can save and continue here. And the way this is set up is that this will not be accessible by anyone. So we need to define test users here that are allowed to authenticate for our little consent screen here. So we add users and I just put in my Gmail address here once again, save and continue. Now I can just head back to dashboard. And then I go for credentials and say create credentials, and we want to do a client ID. And this is supposed to be a web application. I also name this n8n demo. And here I need to specify a redirect URL. And this you can find in the credentials window of n8n. So I can just click it to copy it over and paste it in here and hit create. And now I got my credentials here. So I will just copy the client ID, paste it in here, and take the client secret, paste it in here. And now I can just sign in with my Google account, select the account here, hit next. And I will just select all privileges here, next. Now I got connected and I can close the window and you can see the account is connected now. So now that we are able to use the YouTube node here, we will try to get a video here, and for the video ID, we can just take the video ID from the incoming request here. And for the fields, I will just take the localizations and then we can just test our step. And you can see here, we get the title and the description and the localization for the video we have requested. And now we need to make sure that we return some data to our AI agent. And for this, we will create a set node here. And here we can just do a manual field mapping here. And I don't want to return the full response to our AI agent. I just want the parts I really need in this case. So I will add a field mapping here. And for the name, I will just make a response.original_title here. And I can just pull in the title I got from the YouTube API. And then I add another field here and name this one response.original_description. And I can also pull in the description here. And now when I test the step here, you can see we got a very simple response here that holds the original title and the original description here. And that's basically all for our metadata tool here. And we can head back to our AI agent. And then we can just double click the Get Video Metadata tool here. And I will just add a simple description here. And the purpose of this description is to let the agent know what to use this tool for. In this case, this is very simple, but of course, if you got a more complicated tool, you will need a more complicated and better description because the agent needs to know what he can exactly do with the tool here. And then we have the source of our tool, and that is the database. The database refers to the internal database of n8n. And here you can just select the workflow we have just created. And down here, we have a field that's called field to return. And that one is the response field. And that is the response we have just built with the set node in the metadata tool. So this needs to correspond to what the workflow returns. And of course, you can name it however you want, but it needs to match here and also how the response is coming from the workflow tool. And then I would like to specify an input schema here. And here you have two choices. You can generate it from a JSON example, or you can define a JSON schema down here. For our purposes, the JSON example will be good enough. So I will just copy in an example here. And this is just an example that will basically tell your AI agent how to format the query that needs to be sent to the tool here. And now that's good enough for this tool. And we can start working on the other tool now. So I will just save this workflow. And we need to create another workflow for the translation agent here. And for the translation agent, I will also start with the execute workflow trigger here. And I will set some pinned data here in order to have some starting data here. And as you can see, this data part is a bit more complicated. So first of all, we have the query. And within that query, we have a certain structure. We will send over the video ID. We will send the original title and the original description, the source language, and the target languages we want to have things translated in. And we also need to define a response here. So I will take a set node once again. And now just define a field here and just enter response and give it the value success here. I will not build out the second agent here because the purpose of this video is to show you how the agent and the tools can communicate with each other, and building more sophisticated tools is definitely something for other videos. So stay tuned for more tool and workflow building videos later on. And now I can save this and head back to our agent here. And when I double click the translation agent, I can also give a short description here. And this is also very simple as a description. So I just say, use this tool to submit retrieved metadata for translation. And down here, I can just select my translation agent from the workflow list. And I also would like to define an output schema here. So we will take the generate from JSON example here and give it an example. And here we have a couple of more fields. We want to pass on the video ID to the workflow. The original title we have retrieved with the metadata tool. The original description we also retrieved with the tool. And then we give it the source language, and that will be detected by the AI agent automatically. And we give the target languages here. And this is just an example because the target languages are defined in the system prompt, and this will just tell the agent that the target languages need to be an array with the country codes here. And now we can save it here. And just to show you the inputs and output side by side, when we have the translation tool here and down here, we have our JSON schema and we have the corresponding tool workflow here, and have a look at the input here. You can see the structure is the same. This one up here, query, that's automatically sent by the AI agent. And within that query, we have the structure we have provided to our AI agent in the tool definition. And these two, of course, need to fit together, because otherwise the agent will not be able to send properly formatted data to the workflow that he wants to use. And now we can just have a look at the system prompt here. And as you can see, the system prompt is also kept very simple in this case. So I'm just telling the AI agent, you are a specialized translation coordination agent for video content localization. And here I have some markdown formatting. So we have a headline that says workflow responsibilities. First, obtain video metadata using the get video metadata tool. Second, store retrieved metadata in agent's working memory. Third, identify the source language, because as we have seen in the last tool definition, that is something we want to hand over to the translation agent. And the fourth one is send the data to the translation agent tool. Here I have defined the target languages, and as you can see, this is a longer array than we have in the example of our tool description. So this will hold the actual languages I want to have translations for. And here I have some general rules or key guidelines. So I tell my agent to retrieve the metadata only once and then reuse the data, because the agent will iterate a couple of times in order to fulfill the task. And then I tell the agent to submit all target languages in a single translation request. And I wanted to maintain the metadata integrity. So I want to, of course, keep the formatting with new lines, emojis, and so on and so forth. And down here, I define a stop condition. So after receiving success from the translation agent, it should respond with translations have been submitted. And that's basically all of it. Now I can just save my workflow. And in here, we still have our demo data, and we have a video ID that we can look up here. So we can just test our workflow and see if it's working. And now you can see the agent gets to work here. And now the workflow has been executed successfully. And here you can see we have different usage count. So the agent has used the large language model from Ollama 3 times. It used the memory 2 times, and it used each of the tools once. And when we double click our agent here and just change the size here a little bit and go to logs, we can see what the agent actually has been doing. When we click here on the Ollama chat model, you can see what has been input to the large language model here. And the first use of Ollama in this case was to just submit the system message to the model here. And then the large language model decided, okay, I need to use the get video metadata here. And here we have the tool call. So you can see here, we have the query here, and we have the video ID that was received by the webhook call. And down here, we have the response from the YouTube tool, which retrieved the metadata from the YouTube API here. And of course, this result goes back to the large language model. And you can see here, we have the input here, we have the system message again, and then we have the result of the tool call in order for our large language model to react on this. And now the model decides to call the translation agent. So we have a query here with the video ID we got from the webhook. And here we have the data we have retrieved with the video metadata tool. So we got the original title and the original description here. And down here, we have the source language. We asked our model in the system prompt to detect automatically. And here we have the defined target languages we have also defined in our system prompt. And down here, we got the response that we received from our translation agent tool. And of course, this also needs to get back to the large language model here. And we see the final output that the translation has been submitted. And of course, as this is a webhook call, we can just call this externally. So I will just double click here and get the production URL, because I've set this workflow to active here. So it will react on any call that comes to this webhook here. So get over to my Insomnia here and paste in the URL from our webhook. And here I have a different video ID on a different topic. And what I can do now here is I can just send the request. And here you can see I get an error back because we have sent a post request and we quickly need to fix that because I didn't set it to post here. So we had a GET request here, but as we are sending data to this webhook, it makes sense to do it as a post request. So just change it here, save our workflow, and now we try once more. And of course, this takes a little while because the large language model needs to work. And you can see here, we get the output back, translations have been submitted. And when we head back to our workflow and look for the executions here, you can see that we have exactly the same result as when we were testing it just within n8n. So here we have our webhook call with the different video ID than from the test data. And here we have our AI agent and the logs. And here you can see the agent has followed the exact same steps that we have defined. This was a basic example on how you can build custom tools with n8n for your agents and how to pass data between the agent and the tools. But there are still a couple of things to note here. First of all, this example is not really an agentic workflow. An agentic workflow would involve some reasoning process from the large language model. And in this case, this workflow I've shown you as an example here could also easily build within n8n without any AI. But I still think it was a good example on how to show the different tools and how to build tools for an agent here. Building AI agents is also not as easy as it seems, because how precise and reliable your agent works depends on a couple of factors here. First of all, the AI model you are using determines how good your agent will work. When you use smaller models, you will have a harder time to get your agent working reliably. So when we just head back quickly to our workflow here, and when we just change the model here from the Quen 2.5 7 billion, let's say, to a smaller model, which is Llama 3.2, and save it here, and then we test our workflow, you can see that it executed some of the steps, but not all of them. So when we have a look here in the logs, you can see here that the model has understood that it needs to get the metadata using the get video metadata tool. But after that, it failed. When we have a look at the output here, you can see here the video metadata for the video with the ID is as follows. And here we have the original title and original description. And down here you can see that the model has understood that it should store the metadata in its working memory, and it also understood what the target languages are. And down here it also says that it needs to call the translation agent tool, but it didn't. So as you can see, different models here deliver different results. And the model I have specified before actually delivers the same output every time. And this one here just fails at the first attempt here. And I can try this as often as I want. We will not get to a state where this model with the instructions we gave will successfully do the task we requested here. And that brings us to the second very important factor here, and that's actually the prompts and the tool descriptions. It takes a lot of time and effort to really get the prompts and tool description right, especially when you have more complicated workflows. But in the end, this effort is well spent, because when we don't have an agent that runs reliably and we can count on 100% of the time, there is actually no purpose in building an agent here. So what we definitely need to do is we need to craft good descriptions, good prompts, and good tool descriptions here in order to make it easy for our agents to understand what we want from them. Of course, this gets easier when you use bigger models. We have seen that in the example using Qwen 2.5 and Llama 3.2. Of course, when you got a lot of hardware resources, you can run bigger models on your computer, but especially when you are using agents in your company and a couple of people are using them and you have different tasks, different models and different agents, resources are limited when you run AI agents locally. So at the end of this video, I have two more tips for you. The first one is, please do not use a large language model for everything. Everything you can handle with the workflow in n8n or with code should not be done by a large language model. Using a large language model is always a little bit of a guessing game, and when you have the opportunity to use code or a dedicated workflow, you will have 100% reproducible results every time. I know it is very tempting to just use a large language model, but in the end, all that matters is that we build automations that are reliable and that we can have trust in. The second tip is learn how to write good prompts. Imagine you have a new colleague or employee and you only got one chance to explain the whole job at once. And this is basically the same you need to do when you write a prompt for a large language model. So you give it all the instructions, you need to give it all the context, and you need to be precise and structured in the information you give to the model here. If you have an Anthropic account, because you're using Claude anyway, you can just go to your console on anthropic.com and here you have some prompt options. So for example, you have some prompt generation, and let's say, yeah, you can just tell Claude what you want to do in your prompt and it will generate a prompt for you. And with that prompt, you can really start working here, because in this console, you can work with variables and you can test your prompts and the different prompt versions and verify the results this is delivering. Of course, this is made for Claude, which is one of the best large language models out there. But this is still helpful when you start creating prompts. So that's all for today. If you have any questions, just leave a comment or drop me a message on Discord. I will link the associated workflows down below. And yeah, have fun trying it out for yourself. Bye bye.